this is the time where there's going to be some change, because you recognize where people are headed. People are saying that although diverse, although we're different, there's got to be some change. We've got to be more inclusive in what we're trying to do. We want to be invited to the party. We want to participate because we're different. We also want equal access. And that's the differences that we're seeing. And one of the main reasons, as you asked about why I came here, one of the main reasons is I recognize that Mayor Ginther, and I remember him in his first administration and some of the things that he did. When he first created the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, that was one of his first official acts. And I thought that was interesting, as well as telling about what this mayor believed in. And so I took that and said, you know, it took a couple of years. Who would have known that I'd end up here? Obviously.
Right.
But here I am, and that everything that he does and that I try to do from an office's perspective is to view it through a lens of equity. Okay. So as we look at not just the word diversity, it's equity as well as inclusion. And that's the work that I'm trying to do here in the office. It's a little bit untraditional in the way that we're approaching some things. Everyone simply thinks diversity, EEOC, done. No. I'm looking at diversity from a bigger perspective. When I left this last company and working with my peers in corporate America, diversity isn't the right thing to do. It's a smart thing to do. We look at Columbus right now, we're about 30-ish% Black if you look at the US Census, and 80% of the businesses in Columbus, small women and minority businesses, have fewer than 20 people. So if you look at what's just recently happened with COVID, and oh, by the way, even before COVID, the economic recovery is critical. And the focus on diversity, equity, inclusion is critical simply because of the 80% of the businesses that are being impacted by what's happening. And if we talk about tax revenues and where we need to go as a unit, this isn't about, you know, Black and white and race. This is about pure business. It's forward thinking. And that's where I'm trying to take this office, from just focusing on, we're here just because you're of the diversity part. And again, I'm not negating diversity. I'm just saying it's bigger than just that word. It's a business approach.
Let me ask you about that, because sometimes you hear the word diversity, and there are certain people in the population who consider that a bad word. So it kind of speaks to what you're talking about. It's a money word.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Again, I'm going to email you something at the end of this, okay? Okay. And I want you to see some statistics, but one of our nation's founding principles is all about the government should represent the people they serve. So as we look at diversity and we look at where we're headed, are we representative of the people that we serve? Every city, every town has to recognize that. Why? Because the proportion of people, and this is what I'm going to email to you at the end, the proportion of people of color participating in the workforce that will be diverse, whether it's male, female, intersectional, gay, Black, white, whatever you wanted to talk about, by 2050, there's no racial or ethnic majority in our country. But let's think about this as a business. If you're a business not only recognizing the population that you need to hire, but also the population you need to sell your products, your goods, your services to, and you don't represent that in any way, that's the business model that people are starting to recognize. So this isn't about, you know, I hate you because you're Black, or I hate you because you're Asian, or whatever the case may be. People are starting to recognize there is a business impact that we have to quickly catch up to, which this city, and I'm so proud of working for a mayor focused on this equity agenda, this city is focused on, because as I look at that 80% of the businesses here in Columbus, the purpose and the drive of this office, in addition to ensure that we are focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion from a workforce perspective, is to make sure these businesses have a fair shot. These businesses have a fair access. Now, how has this mayor done that? How are we trying to enable that? Well, even before I arrived, 1993 was the last time they did some study, but this mayor initially kicked off the first disparity study. The disparity study, the reason why that was incredibly important is because, one, you have to have your facts. You have to show that there really is something there. Somebody asked me the other day, and I'm not going to digress, you know, I don't believe in systemic racism because, you know, where's the proof? Show me how, tell me where payroll is systemically racist and all these other things. But I think that as we look at things like the disparity study, which gave us the proof to say we have to look at procurement, there were 4 things that came out of that executive order. I want to make sure I hit all 4. One was they wanted to establish a business advisory council of both internal as well as external contractors and participants in that pool to help us redefine exactly what it is that they're finding are their barriers to success. We don't have the ability to participate. The question was why? So we were able to do that council based on the mayor's executive order. Okay. The second thing we were able to do was to streamline our payment procedures. That's what they're working on now. That was one of the recommendations. Now, why is that important? So Tracy, if you opened a business and it was a small business and they said that you've got to pay your folks for $50,000 a month. Well, if it takes 7 months for you to get your money back from the city or from someone else, how are you going to pay your payroll? Right. And if you think about those 80% of small businesses, they're like, we can't get our money so we can do the payroll so we can stay in place so we can continue to participate. So the city's saying, we're looking at our payroll, our procedures, and we're streamlining those. That's one of the recommendations. And the third one is develop standards for unbundling large procurement opportunities. Now, here's why that's important. I believe that there is a place and time for everyone to participate. But if you have an opportunity for a $50 million deal, and only the biggest can respond to it, and the largest construction company can respond, how can a small mom and pop, that 80%, remember I keep saying that 80% of those folks out there, how can they compete? So what we're saying is one of the recommendations from the disparity study was to say, unbundle some of that. Peel off, as my daddy used to say, just peel off a piece for me. That's what it is. Peel off some pieces so that 80% still has a chance to participate either in subcontractors or even to go after that business directly. So that was another one of the recommendations. And again, under this mayor, he said, let's peel this back. This is that systemic stuff that we're talking about that's been in place. And then there was one other, was an owner-controlled insurance policy. Now, this is interesting because for anything you do, whether you have a contractor at home or somebody that's doing any business for the city, the one thing that they have to have in place is insurance. So if there is a small mom and pop going after some business, and the business is only about $50,000, but yet the insurance on the deal is $1 million. But I wanted to make sure that you understood that this whole disparity study and recognizing the recommendations that came out of it, there were some truly tangible recommendations that will not only allow our people from a small minority and women-owned business compete more fairly, but truly to open up the portals of opportunity so that everyone has a chance. Because if we don't help these small businesses, they're 80% of what we have in Columbus. That's our tax revenue. That's people going to school. That's kids working. I mean, those are the things that we're trying to do to drive the economic empowerment. So I digress by going off on that disparity study, but that's really important because right now in this office, it's about forward thinking, 2, 5, 10 years, what are we going to look like? I recognize where the population is going. We recognize in this office who's competing, how do we have to stand them up? And I'm also recognizing they have some barriers to success.
In 6 months, if I were to be able to talk to you again, what would you be able to point to as sort of the proof of performance?
If I'm able to see a growth in my MBE participation, if I'm able to see additional access to funding, I'm not going to stop. We're developing relationships with small banks right now to help the 700 plus certified vendors that we have in the city. And that doesn't stop with us because our certification is up by about 12 to 15% year over year. More and more people are coming to the city to get certified. We have an excellent program. Additionally, I'd like to see the implementation of those recommendations of the disparity study because I know that that's going to codify the impact that we want to see to ensure people have equal access and they have the opportunity to participate and some of the opportunities in the city. And then also one of the things that we're going to do is we want to be the role model. I think that they mentioned to you our 30 by 30 challenge to ourselves, where we're saying at this point, we want to look through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we want to look inward and say, you know, preliminarily, what are we going to look like? You know, what do we look like from a workforce perspective, a senior leadership perspective, a board's perspective? If you have boards, some companies do, some companies don't, boards and commissions. And then, of course, have we grown our participation from a supplier diversity perspective to grow it year over year over year?